Good afternoon. Joining me this afternoon is Rick Hamilton, our division commander here with Division 31 in Grand Haven, Michigan. Rick has been with the auxiliary for 7 years and is very active in a variety of different roles with the Coast Guard Auxiliary. I am currently serving as Rick's vice division commander. And Rick, I want to talk to you a little bit about some of the leadership things that you and I talk about from time to time. And I have a couple questions in relationship to where we're at today with our division and what we're looking forward to and how we are going to engage some of the people we lead going forward. So with that in mind, Rick, of the two management concepts of culture and strategy, which one do you think comes first in leading an organization?
Oh, by far it's culture. Peter Drucker said culture eats strategy for breakfast every day. I think strategy is really about sort of aligning people. It's an objective that you set for a particular mission, and culture is all about how you get it done, how you work as a team to achieve that strategy or that mission. So you can set a goal, which is strategy, but if people are not aligned under the umbrella of a strong culture, you're likely not to be as successful getting it done.
So culture is obviously very, very important, getting the culture right. It's kind of like, and I'm a fan of Jim Collins, who writes From Good to Great, and he talks about getting the right people on the bus, getting them all on the same route, and then strategy is actually the things that you do as you move along on that route.
That's
so, right. Yep. If you were to be an outsider looking at the Coast Guard Auxiliary, and in particular our division, Division 31, how would you describe our culture?
Well, it's a great culture, actually. I think, first of all, it's a culture that's sort of rooted in a history. There's a history of pride around here. Places like Holland and Grand Haven have served the Coast Guard and their community for years, and I think that's deeply ingrained in everything we do in 31. We have some incredibly active members when it comes to sort of recreational boating safety as one example. We do more VEs than many flotillas around the world. So you've got a lot of active members, a lot of history, and I think a dedication to serving the community and the Coast Guard, and that's a fantastic cornerstone of our culture in 31.
Have you ever been with an organization that has a bad culture, a culture that's not working for them? And if you have been, Rick, what might that look like?
Yeah, I think over the course of anybody's career, you might find yourself in a place where you run into a situation where the culture is not great. For me, I think the underlying characteristic of a bad culture is where everybody's sort of in it for themselves. That sort of personifies a bad culture. And it creates a weird situation. People aren't aligned, it's hard to get objectives completed, but as an individual, I think the biggest impact is you tend to feel lonely, right? If you're in a world where everybody's in it for themselves, you're kind of isolated.
Yeah.
And that's a really poor situation to work in.
Yeah.
Don't want to be there again, for sure.
Neither do I. How do you go about changing a unit's culture, Rick? When you take over as the leader, be that a flotilla, division, and points upward, how do you go about implementing maybe a new culture or changing the culture or modifying it so that it's going to work for you as the leader?
Yeah, it's a good question, Dan. I think the first thing for me I've learned over time and I have been taught, you can't dictate or create a culture. You can't organize around it. You can't force it. You have to live it every day. So when you're talking about leadership, this is a cornerstone. You have to behave in a way that expresses the culture you're trying to deliver. And over time, people will start to follow. Because as a leader, you're constantly under the microscope, and if you sort of are trying to build a culture in an organization but you don't behave under the guidelines of that culture, it starts to crumble very quickly. So culture takes time. It's something you do, it's something you live, it's not really something you build.
Yeah. I know when I was serving as a Marine in the Marine Corps, we were always taught as NCOs, non-commissioned officers, to lead from the front. And to get in the trenches and do not be afraid to get in there and get your hands dirty. And you as a leader should be able to do everything that you're asking your people to do. That does not mean that you're doing the work, but you are to set the example.
Yeah, I would just add to that. I think a strong culture is one where everybody in your organization desires to participate.
Yeah.
If they feel like they're being forced to fit into a culture, it's not really real. So the Marine Corps does a great job of it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, people get in because of that culture.
Yeah.
So you have to set the stage, you have to lead from the front, and people need to be drawn to it or it won't survive.
Sure. I know the Master Chief here at the station is very much of the same mindset. Master Chief's goal is to have people that he employs be passionate about coming to work every day. And that's his goal, is to empower the people so that they want to be here, they're making a contribution. And so you share that very similarly with the Master Chief. Okay, let's talk right now about the 4 cornerstones of the auxiliary, Rick. And just to remind you, those 4 cornerstones are membership services, recreational boating safety, operations and marine safety, and fellowship, which is very, very important. Does culture play a role in those 4 auxiliary cornerstones?
Oh, culture plays a role in every one of those cornerstones. If you think about membership and membership services, that's really all about culture. Why do people want to be a part of the auxiliary? It's a family they want to join.
Yep.
If you think about marine safety and recreational boater safety, I happen to be in the aviation world. We always talk about a culture of safety. You can't have a safe environment if it's not ingrained in everything that you do. So that's, super important.
Yeah.
And certainly with fellowship, people want to be together. They want to be together with people who share the same common ideals and cultures and values, and that's really important to the auxiliary. So I think in all of those, culture it's paramount.
It's paramount.
Yeah.
Yep. Last question here this morning, Rick. Let's talk about 2021 as we're still working through some of the limitations and impacts of COVID. What are some of the keys to leading people in the rest of this year as well as 2022?
Yeah, that's a great question, Dan. I think, for many years, the auxiliary lived around a world where we got together. We have monthly meetings, we have operational events, we have PA events and PE events. And so it was all about in-person conversation, communication, and interaction. And in the pandemic world, that's more difficult.
Yep.
We all were sort of locked down for the better part of a year. So as leaders, I think we're all going through a big shift, which is our leadership capabilities in the auxiliary were sort of moments in times, and we really had to perform well in those moments in time. Now it's 24/7.
Yeah.
You have to interact with we have hundreds of members here in 31, and trying to stay in communication with all of them is a real-time event now. It can't be moment in time because we live behind a camera or in a Zoom meeting, and those are great, but they lack the personal touch. So as leaders, we have to find ways to reach out, to interact, to be more connected. And I think for all of us, that's going to be a big shift for the coming years, because I think it's going to be important.
Yeah, I know for me, being a flotilla commander and now a vice division commander, and having myself been in the auxiliary, 12 or 13 years, I know we're not going back to the old days. Right. This thing called COVID has definitely changed our organization. And for me personally, I think some of the keys are you need to be very flexible in your approach on how you try to accomplish the mission or the task that you want to do. And you have to embrace new things. You have to try different ideas. You have to be open to those ideas. Some things are going to work. Some things you're going to probably discard because they're not working. But I think the operative word for me is a hybrid model. You do a little bit of both, and you do a trial and error, and some things are just going to be smooth sailing, and some things are going to be a bumpy road, and you have to decide as a leader as to which thing you're going to handle for yourselves. So, all right. Well, thank you very much, Rick. I really appreciate your time, and we'll get back to our D-Train meeting.